Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You gave us just an incredible stack of sources this week, and they all seem to revolve around this single central question.
Yeah.
Where are the real friction points in the modern American system?
Exactly.
So our mission today is to chart 3 major areas where this centralized power, whether it's in media or tech or politics, is, well, it's clashing head-on with these really disruptive, decentralized forces.
That's right. And we have 3 pretty complex threads that we need to weave together for you.
Okay.
So first, we're going to dissect this multi-billion-dollar bidding war for Warner Bros. Discovery, a huge battle over legacy media.
Right.
Second, we're going to look at just the raw, sometimes chaotic energy of these new populist movements. We'll use the rise of Nick Fuentes and his America First platform as a case study.
Okay.
And then finally, we tackle this paradox of advanced AI. You've got the utopian hype on one side, and on the other, these really severe dystopian fears about government power and, of course, job loss.
Okay, let's unpack this, and we should probably start at the top with the media mega deal. This intense showdown for Warner Bros., Discovery, or WBD.
WBD is it's a massive target. It's currently run by David Zaslav, but the company is really defined by its assets and, maybe more importantly, its burden.
The burden being the debt.
The debt. We're talking about gold-plated brands, HBO, the DC Universe, that huge film library, CNN, TNT. But underneath all of that
There it is
a substantial $30 billion debt load. And that liability is it's absolutely driving the structure of both of these bids.
That debt is the gravity well here. So initially, Netflix steps into the ring.
Right.
But their offer is very specific, $83 billion, but for just the streaming assets.
Right.
Their whole goal was to combine the #1 and #3 streamers globally.
And the WBD board was apparently ready to take that deal.
They were.
Which is fascinating, right?
Because Netflix wants the future. They want the streaming platform, the content pipeline, and none of the, legacy debt or the cable news headaches. None of it. But then the deal got complicated. Fast. Because then you see this hostile, all-encompassing offer from the Paramount and Ellison family camp, a colossal $108 billion in cash for the entire company.
The whole thing.
CNN, the debt, everything. Had the way bigger bid, and it involves some serious financial firepower. I mean, $41 billion of that is equity financing.
And this is a point where we really have to pause because the sources highlighted a key financial nuance here.
Okay.
That equity financing for the Paramount bid involves Middle East sovereign wealth funds.
So state money.
This is not just rich investors. This is capital controlled by foreign governments helping to finance the acquisition of key American cultural and news infrastructure. And that just adds a whole geopolitical layer to who controls what you watch and read.
Yeah, that really raises the stakes beyond just Hollywood accounting. But let's look at the size difference. You pointed out that $100 billion deals often look backward, while the smaller $1 billion bets look forward. Tell us more about that.
It's a fascinating lens to look through because the size of the deal often tells you what it's really about.
How so?
Well, think about when Google bought YouTube for $1.6 billion or Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion. Those deals weren't priced on existing profit. They were pure bets on growth, on future dominance.
They were buying the future.
Exactly. When you see a deal that's over $100 billion, especially for a company with $30 billion in debt, that valuation is underwritten by the past. It's guaranteed, stable, historical revenue from things like cable fees and old licensing deals. So this WBD fight, it's fundamentally a financial transaction. It's about carving up legacy assets, not a true bet on the cutting edge.
But what about the cultural power? I mean, a brand like CNN or HBO, isn't that so immense that it goes beyond just pure financial legacy? How do you even measure that kind of risk?
That's the tension. And that tension shows up immediately when you look at the antitrust calculation.
Sure.
If Netflix buys WBD, regulators suddenly see the 800-pound gorilla just getting bigger, which raises serious antitrust red flags. They already dominate streaming.
And the Paramount bid.
It's larger, but it includes all the older, less dominant cable assets, which kind of dilutes that immediate antitrust risk in the streaming space. It's a clever package from a regulatory standpoint.
The talent is also raising flags. Hollywood unions, the WGA, SAG, are strongly opposing the Netflix deal.
And that's critical because these are the people who actually make the stuff you watch.
Right.
And their opposition, it comes from two places. One is the immediate fear of just massive job cuts.
The overlap?
The inevitable overlap, yes. And the other is a structural concern about how they get paid. Traditional studios like WBD, they often give showrunners back-end participation, equity, a piece of the show's long-term success.
Netflix doesn't do that.
Netflix is known for paying huge salaries up front, but they deny that back-end participation. They're effectively cutting creators out of the long-term wealth from their own successful IP. It fundamentally changes the economic structure of Hollywood.
But there is a really provocative counter-argument in the sources, one that basically asks if any of this even matters culturally. This perspective argues that buying these traditional media brands like a CNN or a CBS News it's like buying RCA records.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy is powerful. It really is.
In what way?
It suggests these legacy brands are just cultural husks. They're names with no material effect on the conversation anymore. The real cultural battle, this argument goes, is happening on platforms like YouTube and X, where user-generated content is king and, where censorship or control actually matters.
And the audience numbers seem to back that up. Free services like TikTok and YouTube, they just dwarf the audiences of paid streamers, especially with younger people.
Oh, absolutely. The sources say they're simply not interested in movies anymore. The future is unscripted, it's uncontrolled, and this $100 billion deal doesn't change the fact that the younger generation is watching free content made by other young people.
So the battle over WBD is a fight over a shrinking pie.
That's right. And that brings us perfectly to our next thread. How the anger toward these concentrated power centers is fueling, well, new forms of decentralized populist organization.
So we're shifting now from the consolidated power of corporate media to the fragmented, defiant power of online populism. Our sources went deep into the world of Nick Fuentes.
Right.
He's a 27-year-old white nationalist with a huge following on Rumble, about 500,000 subscribers, for his America First platform.
And it's crucial here to understand the source material's analysis of why this platform got traction. Fuentes is openly controversial. He identifies as a racist. He says he finds women very difficult and that he does absolutely not believe women should have the right to vote. But his movement's origin story is really rooted in defiance. He started small, and the attempts to shut him down
backfired. They
made his movement fester, even after a frankly mild tweet about Israel when he was just a freshman at PragerU.
That's the classic Streisand effect.
Yeah.
But for political movements, the sources suggest his popularity isn't built on ideology alone. It's this potent mix of defiance, that up yours, buddy, attitude plus humor, and the perception that he says a lot of true things the establishment ignores.
And those true things tap directly into the widespread disaffectedness of young men.
The economic anxiety.
Yes. The intense difficulty in getting a good job, buying a home, accessing affordable health care. His content is a rallying point for those who feel totally shut out of the system.
We have to define the core term here, as the sources present it. The struggle is over the term America First. It's not presented as a political party, but as the only legitimate function of a government, that it must act solely on behalf of its own citizens. Anything else is framed as treason.
And if we look at the underlying mechanics, the sources present his platform, this white identity politics, as the inevitable, though, extreme result of generalized identity politics across the whole society.
How so?
The analysis suggests that when a society organizes itself politically around tribal identity instead of universal citizenship, the most extreme forms of identity politics are just bound to emerge. It's a reaction.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The sources also indicate that this movement's success is, quote, not entirely organic.
Right.
There appears to be a coordinated amplification process at work.
Indeed. We're seeing evidence of these largely unverified accounts coming from places like India, Pakistan, Nigeria, all boosting his content.
And what's the interpretation of that?
Some analysts see it as a foreign effort specifically designed to create and magnify dissent and chaos in America by promoting internal division.
And the media's role is also under the microscope here. Some sources argue that when, say, the New York Times covers figures like this so extensively, they might be unintentionally mainstreaming him.
As a tactic, you mean?
As a tactic to paint the entire political right as evil, racist ideologues, which then just fuels more defiance among his followers who already distrust the media.
This raises an important question. If tribalism is the existential threat to every society, as the sources claim,
Which it seems to be.
then the solution isn't presented as censorship, which, as we've seen, often backfires. It's presented as racializing our society and enforcing universal shared principles for all American citizens. That's positioned as the only real antidote to identity politics, no matter what form it takes.
Let's shift gears now to the third major source of friction, the AI paradox. This clash between utopian hype and severe dystopian fear, especially from the political right.
It is a genuine paradox. You're seeing these traditionally free market, low regulation advocates on the right taking a surprisingly anti-AI stance.
Why is that?
It's driven by a conviction that the risks, and they see a lot of them, massive job displacement, chaos, the erosion of reality, the staggering energy draw, that these risks just disproportionately outweigh the announced upsides. They're deeply skeptical of a technology controlled by institutions they already distrust.
We also have to think about the massive geopolitical angle. The sources frame AI as an existential race.
A race for survival, really.
They predict that in 10 years, nations will fall into one of three buckets. Exporters, like the U.S. and China. Strategic partners, or importers. And the importers, the analysis warns, risk becoming vassal states.
So this is a geopolitical necessity, winning the AI race. And yet, why isn't the public excitement matching the severity of that threat? Why isn't everyone cheering for U.S. dominance?
Exactly. If the stakes are vassal state versus world leader, why are we all just talking about job loss?
The industry has done a, frankly, terrible job communicating the benefits. Their focus on setting and then, delaying AGI timeframes. And their decision to fund studies for universal basic income, that's been so counterproductive. It's created resentment. It fuels this public idea that AI just means replacing workers and giving them government welfare, which a lot of people just don't want.
So what's the real upside they should be talking about?
The real upside is that AI will radically reduce the cost of basically all goods and services. It'll cut education costs by up to 90% and enable these massive healthcare breakthroughs. That's the abundance argument they're failing to make.
That disconnect between the utopian promise and the immediate, terrifying threat of job loss is so palpable, especially in fields like customer service, logistics.
Of course. But this is where the economic data provides a fascinating check on the fear. The latest reports, and we're talking about highly respected trackers like Challenger Gray and the Yale Budget Lab.
Okay, what do they show?
They're showing no discernible disruption in the labor market right now.
That's a huge statement, no disruption. But we hear about layoffs every week.
We do, but the sources indicate AI has accounted for only 4.7% of total layoffs. And more importantly, you have the counter data. AI is responsible for roughly half of recent U.S. GDP growth.
Half of recent GDP growth. That's an astonishing figure.
It is a massive, positive macroeconomic impact that's happening right now.
So if that's true, why is the primary public fear still mass job replacement and not massive wealth creation?
Because the benefits are currently being captured at the corporate level, right? They're not immediately transferred to the average worker. However, the data does show where the jobs are thriving.
Which is where?
In roles that require cognitive ability married with physical dexterity. The people who can combine technical understanding with hands-on skill.
So trades.
Electricians, plumbers, high-level construction workers. In some of these high-demand sectors, master electricians are reportedly commanding up to $800,000 a year. AI automates the paper pushing. It rewards the ability to operate in the physical world.
This brings us right back to the concentration of power. If the biggest fear isn't actually job loss, what is the true existential risk we should be focused on here?
The biggest risk is not AGI becoming Terminator. It's the Orwellian threat. It's powerful humans and governments using AI for repression and surveillance. We've already seen powerful actors try to program specific ideology and DEI concerns into the models.
Right, the Google example.
Which led to disastrous biased outputs like the Black George Washingtons or the Nazi outputs. They're trying to port the entire trust and safety censorship apparatus from social networks directly onto AI.
And that concentration of power fundamentally threatens privacy. If everything we do online is tracked, analyzed, and judged, we lose our autonomy.
Absolutely. The sources argue it is critical that we find a way to replicate the fungible nature of physical cash online. The dollar bill in your pocket is anonymous. It can't be scrutinized based on your purchasing patterns. Without a digital equivalent that protects that kind of financial privacy, citizens risk being systematically scrutinized. The threat of control is so much greater than the threat of job loss.
So what does this all mean? We started with this media consolidation battle that might be over irrelevant legacy brands. Then we moved to a populist backlash that demands universal principles over tribalism. And we finished with an AI future where the threat of surveillance seems much bigger than the threat of economic collapse.
The core anxiety, the thing tying all three topics together, media, populism, and AI, it's this pervasive fear of concentrated power reducing the economic and political autonomy of the average citizen. Exactly. Whether it's centralized media control or the identity politics framework or the surveillance capabilities of AI, the fear is losing your agency in the world. And this leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. We saw that jobs requiring specialized physical skills are booming right now amidst all the AI fears. So what if the U.S. were to eliminate federal student loan underwriting?
Go on.
And allow the free market, say major tech or construction companies, to step in and fully subsidize students' training to become master electricians or other high-demand trades. Could that single targeted action reinforce the economic upside of AI for the average person, and in doing so, address the two most acute domestic anxieties at the same time? Crippling student debt and fears of mass job loss. Something to think about until our next deep dive.